let's just wait for the. Oh, say it. Okay, so first of all, it's nice to see everybody that we didn't see for a while because of the Tishrei break and then the changes when we daven Ma'ariv, the clock and everything. So for the benefit of those who weren't here last week, when we started the Ma'amah, we'll do a short review of the basic ideas that we had last week in the Ma'amah. So our Ma'amah Dibra Maschel Vayihyu Chayei Sarah from Tafshin Mem Aleph of the Rebbe, and the Ma'amah was said Eil Chav Cheshvan, and so it's miyusad on a Ma'amah of the Eber Hashab. Vayihyu Chayei Sarah. Chav Cheshvan is the birthday of the Eber Hashab. It's miyusad on a Ma'amah of the Eber Hashab. The pasuk says, "Vayihyu Chayei Sarah me'ah shana ve'esim shana ve'sheva shana shnei Chayei Sarah." That the life of Sarah was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And then Rashab has two questions. First of all, why do we bother to mention for how long Sarah lived, how old she was when she passed away? It's not the derech to do that. We don't find that by the other imahis. Second of all, why does the pasuk repeat itself and say Shnei Chayei Sarah? We already said Vayihyu Chayei Sarah. Why does it repeat itself Shnei Chayei Sarah? These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Deborah Rashab brings from the Zayr, we're going bekitzer now, but Deborah Rashab says that Sarah accomplished a unique feat. She had a Yerida, but she didn't remain in her Yerida. She was Eila afterwards. Sarah Yemenu went down to Mitzrayim. It's very easy to envision how this was a Yerida, but it was also a Yerida Beruchnias, right? She was Avram Avinu's wife. Avram Avinu was a wealthy man, a prosperous man. He had owned a lot of property and a lot of cattle, etc., and he was well respected. And Sarah was the queen, so to speak, of in Avram Avinu's home. And from that situation, because there was a hunger, so she ended up in Mitzrayim. And she ended up being, first they had to hide her in a suitcase, which is Bechlala Yerida compared to her ma'am with the matzav before. And then she was taken to the house of Pari, which is Legamri Yerida. And nevertheless, even though she had this Yerida, what does it say? Eventually, Vayal Avram hu v'ishtoi mitzrayim. She had an aliyah, she went back up. In the Ruchnis and Yonim, it means that she had a Yerida that she had to do with klippus. She left Eretz Yisrael, she went to Mitzrayim, she had to do with klippus, but the klippus didn't affect her, and she went back up. And the Zohar says that because of this, Zachsa l'chayin Eloin, she merited to have chayin Eloin, a higher type of life. It's a different type of life than other people have, than what is common. And the Zohar finishes, Baldodi lo habuchayin, and therefore life itself belongs to her. So the Rebbe Rashab says that these two inyanim in the pasuk Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, that the pasuk enumerates the years of Sarah, how long she lived, and then the pasuk repeats itself and says Shnei Chayei Sarah. They correspond to these two ideas that the Zohar says by V'negeh to Sarah Yemenu. Saying how many years she lived, that's because because her life was special. Since her life was special, she had a chayin eloin, a higher type of life than ordinary people. Therefore, we say how many years she lived. Shnei Chayei Sarah is entirely another Indian, an even greater Indian, a higher Indian. Life, her life belonged to her. She didn't receive life, but rather life belongs to her. And the Zohar compares Sarah's Yerida to two other Yeridas that happened before. The Yerida of Chava with the Chetei Tzadas, that she had to do with the snake, and she ended up having a Yerida, and through that came the Chetei Tzadas, so there was no Aliyah afterwards. And also the Yerida of Noach after the Mabul, when he planted the vineyard and he made wine and he got drunk, and that was a Yerida also. And there was no Aliyah afterwards. Mashiach and Sarah, she had a Yerida and she had an Aliyah. So Deborah asks a few questions. First of all, Deborah wants to understand what's the idea of Chayin Eloin, of a higher type of a life. Second of all, what's the idea of Dilah Havuchayin, that life belongs to her? Third of all, what's the connection between the story of Chetei Tzadas and the story of Noach and the story of Sarah? They're entirely different stories. The Zohar makes it sound like it's one story in 3 chapters, continuing on the same theme. What's the connection between them? That's aleph. In Beis, the Rebbe points out that whatever happened to the Aves and the Imahis is a siman for us afterwards for generations to come. Maisa Aves siman Labanim, and the Rebbe is Maisa also whatever happens to the Imahis, to the mothers. And the Rebbe wants to know, what does it mean in our Aveda? Yeah. To have this Aveda of Sarah of Nachtis V'Salkis, that she descends, she goes down, and then she goes back up. What is this Aveda in our life? In Gimel, the Rebbe finally starts going to the main point of the Maimer. The Rebbe says like this: that the Rebbe Rashab explains in his Maimer that serving Hashem has to be besimcha. And like he says in the Ha'aris, this is not only the Rebbe Rashab in his Maimer, it's brought down in countless Ma'amorim, that a Yid must serve the Eibishter besimcha. And not only that you must serve the Eibishter besimcha, but serving the Eibishter besimcha is a primary concern. It's a ikar gadol. It's a very important aspect of serving Hashem, and he brings from Tachlis Shel Evatas Avaylekach Besimcha, and he brings from the Arizal. Tanya brings that down. That's right, and he explains that when a Yid does his Aveda Besimcha, then his Aveda is done b'shleimus. If the Aveda is without Simcha, so fine. So he did his Aveda. He did his mitzvahs. He did the mitzvah of Lulav and Esek. He put on tefillin in the morning. He's wearing tzitzis. He gave tzedakah. All the mitzvahs that a Yid does. However, if he does it without a simcha, so it's not done b'shleimus. It's done as a, by the way, or because he had to do it. An aveda b'shleimus means when you do it b'simcha. And the Rebbe points out that when a Yid does his aveda b'shleimus, the entire world reaches its ultimate shleimus. Then the Rebbe adds one more vart. That not only that you have to do your aveda b'simcha, not only that aveda Hashem has to be b'simcha, but it must be b'simcha. If you don't do aveda Hashem b'simcha, then something primary, the main point is missing. It's not only that this is the best way to do it, that you end up doing it b'shleimus. If you don't do your Aveda b'simcha, then it's like the Aveda wasn't done in the first place. Why? Or like the Aveda wasn't done at all. Why? Because the whole point of mitzvahs is to draw down Shekhinah, to draw down a likus into the world. The only way to draw down a likus into the world is when you do the mitzvahs b'simcha. If you don't do the mitzvahs b'simcha, it doesn't have its effect. It's intended. The reason for it to be done, which is to bring a likus into the world, it doesn't happen. So therefore, you must do mitzvahs b'simcha, and if you don't do mitzvahs b'simcha, so you end up in a situation of chas v'shalom, a terrible punishment. All of the punishments that's described in Parshas Kisaveh. It's interesting. This Maimer, Hashkacha Pratis, I saw on Shabbos, Tafshin Yud Beis, which is the first year that the Rebbe said was saying Ma'amorim on this time of the year, right? The Rebbe started his official nisis when he was saying Ma'amorim in Tafshin Shvat. So Tafshin Yud Beis was the first year. The Rebbe says a Maimer Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, and it's a very, very similar Maimer to this one. I learned the Maimer quickly. It's a built-in Muga Maimer. The flow of the Maimer is different, but it seems that the Nekudas are mamish nearly the same, if not the same. I can't tell. You have to learn a Maimer as a being to be able to tell if it's the same idea. There's probably some differences, but it's more or less the same Maimer. And in that Maimer, the Rebbe explains why serving the Eibishter b'simcha is an absolute must, and why dafka serving the Eibishter b'simcha do you draw down a likus into this world. The explanation that the Rebbe gives over there is that when the idea of drawing down a likus in the world, we're talking about drawing down the essence of the Eibishter, atzmos u'mahos. You can't connect to atzmos u'mahos by doing mitzvahs with understanding, because your understanding is limited. Your understanding is limited. When you approach things with your understanding, so you'll draw down a certain level of kedusha, whatever level of kedusha your understanding is shaykhis to. But atzmos u'mahos, the essence of the Eibishter, that you can't draw down. When you serve the Eibishter b'simcha, and this simcha is connected to this Ava Kadosh Baruch Hu Liyas Leisbarach B'Tachtenu, that the Eibishter had a taiva, and a taiva is in of a tainug and simcha, and your simcha is what? Is the simcha of the tainug of the Eibishter. So now it's not about your gedarim, it's not about your levels of understanding or your levels of your neshama. It's about the nisavit. It's about the simcha of the Eibishter, and you're doing the mitzvah with that simcha, so that can draw down the essence of the Eibishter. That can draw down the atzmos u'mahos. Akol panim. So serving the Eibishter must be b'simcha. Yeah, and it's good news. Pashtus, it's very nice to know. It's very important to serve the Eibishter b'simcha. It's a much better way of living life. B'simcha. Yeah, this is a sugya that nobody needs much explanation about. However, says the Rebbe, there's a knetch over here. There's a problem. It doesn't call it a problem, but the Rebbe says there's a caveat. There's a major but, a very big but. What's the but? So Taka says in one pasuk, Ivdu Hashem b'simcha in Tehillim. In another pasuk in Tehillim, it says Ivdu Hashem b'yirah, that you have to serve the Eibishter with fear. Simcha and fear are opposites. They don't go together. Yeah, also a very pashut concept. When somebody is b'simcha, so he's feeling, it's a straight, he's feeling expansive, he's feeling open, everything is flowing. When he's b'yireh, he's tzekvetched, he's in a corner, he's cowering, he's afraid. He's not expressive. Nothing is coming out. He's biyira. But this pasuk itself, even with Hashem biyira, continues and says v'gilu birada. That even though it has to be even just Hashem biyira, dafechet zayin gilu birada. You also have to be happy, but the happiness itself should be in a trembling way. So, so what's going on over here? So first of all, a small beer. So first, so the Rebbe says that because when Simcha comes b'morgish, there's a concept of b'morgish. I wish I would have prepared a lot more for today's year, because there's some concepts that are very important to understand. So the first concept is the concept of b'morgish. Says that a person is a mitzias. Then on top of that, the mitzias could be b'morgish. And then the worst one, on top of that is it could be noch begaiva, about gaiva. So in
what sense? That he feels?
He feels. Oh, good. So the mortgage, the best way to explain the mortgage is that he feels. Yeah. Just the fact that he feels. If we're talking about gaiva is a very easy concept to understand. Remember, it's not an easy concept to understand.
We understand.
You understand?
What? I can't believe you. But mortgage.
Let's talk a start. Let's also b'ashkacha pratz. I heard a sikh of the Rebbe, and I have the Rebbe pod in my car. It's connected every time I turn on the engine. So a sikh of the Rebbe starts playing. So last week I heard a sikh of the Rebbe where the Rebbe it gives a beer in gaiva. What's pshat gaiva? And it was very interesting to me because it's hard to figure what exactly is gaiva, and it's very important to understand what's gaiva. So the Rebbe says gaiva is like this. The Rebbe says gaiva is nish as a reis dinezer b'yad. Gaiva doesn't mean that somebody has to put everybody else down. He has to rip his nose off. That somebody puts everybody else down. It's lav dafka avart from gaiva. It could be avart of other midas reis, but lav dafka gaiva. He says also gaiva isn't that he needs everybody to say that he's a gadol b'Yisrael. Doesn't mean that everybody should say. So what is gaiva there? It says gaiva is the idea of ein anivu hu yechelin lader. What's ein anivu hu yechelin lader? It says when somebody has a ratzin takif, he has a very strong will. He wants things to be in a certain way. And then there's somebody else, was weiß zechois is negeya and his mitzias. That guy refuses his will. He doesn't want it to be that way. That guy goes on the warpath. The lashon of the Eber macht chorev alts arum zich. He goes on the warpath to make sure to destroy that person's mitzias, so that everybody should know. As jener hat gemeint, is kann sich gleichen mit dem. When jener hat gemeint, is a baldeya.
You cannot say it in English afterwards, yeah?
That person thought that he's his equal. That person thought that he has some sort of an opinion. And I have my own ratzon tak. If I wanted things to be in a certain way, he goes and destroys the person, not only, or he tries to alk upon him, and in the process, he makes everything chayv around him. The Rebbe says, before he explains this, the Rebbe says, because it makes no sense. The Rebbe says, when it comes to every other area in life, he's a peacock. He's a wise person. But when it comes to somebody who's negayan his mitzias and his gaiva, then he loses all rational behavior. All around, it goes in an illogical way, destroys himself, destroys anything good that could have been in his day. But the ikir is that everybody should know that guy who thought he could say an opinion, it's expressed in work. You see this a lot. In work you get to meet many different personalities, and if you're having a meeting, and one guy says let's use this tool, and another guy says let's use that tool. So some people who don't suffer from gaiva say we'll use that tool. You have certain people, you suggest something, they go on a torrent, you're stopping. What's your met? Such a guy once at work. You're holding back progress, and you're throwing wheels in the progress of in the profitability of the company, whatever. He goes and he tries to destroy the other person. Anyways, that's gaiva. That's his gaiva. So we're not talking about this. That's out of the question. We're not talking about this. We're also not talking about mitzias, bittul mitzias. We're talking about bittul mitzias, will also be a different story. Bittul mitzias is that the person does not feel like he's anything at all. I'm not going to go into arichas and that right now. But bittul mitzias is that the person feels he has no mitzias. Nicht ashmata, chas v'shalom, and it's very important for the Smimer to understand what the Rebbe says. Chas v'shalom, we're not talking about a shmata. Not talking about shmata. Reb Leivik has a teir, shmartim es hamatzis. Shmartim es hamatzis, or shmartim es hamitzvahs, or what's the lesson in the pasuk of Pshutik? Shmartim es hamatzis. You have to watch the matzahs. So Reb Leivik says a word like this: matzah is the meaning of bittul, right? Chametz is it rises the meaning of yeshus, of gaiva. Matzah is the meaning of bittul. Says Reb Leivik, you have to have ushmartim es hamatzis. Bittul needs a shmirah. What's the shmirah? Because if you understand bittul to mean that you're an askupa hanidresis in the lashon of Reb Leivik, you're a door sash or a saddle, whatever it's called, that everybody steps on, it's going to lead to no good things, and therefore you need a shmir with the bittul. You shouldn't confuse it, to misunderstand what the idea of bittul is, and think that it means being stepped on by ashmata in your lashon, or that everybody steps on you. So the is not being stepped on. Bittul is pshat that you're one with the Eibishter. Bittul is pshat that you don't view yourself as your own person, with your own understanding, with your own accomplishments, with your own wants. You view yourself merely as an extension of the Eibishter.
And how does that interplay with interpersonal relationships?
Interpersonal, I can have many expressions in interpersonal relationships. If it's all about you, and somebody refuses you, and somebody's giving you a hard time, then you'll go out to destroy him. If it's not about you, if you want something to happen, but it's because of the Eibishter, but be'emes, not like the people who say, if it was about my covet, I'd be quiet. But it's covet that Torah.
That's a lot of problems in marriage.
In marriage, it's all over. That's
thing.
why marriage is so hard. Because before a person is married, he has his gaiva. Everybody has gaiva. Gaiva is nothing to be embarrassed of. Somebody who's embarrassed of gaiva is the biggest about gaiva, because he thinks he doesn't have gaiva. And when he sees his gaiva, so now he's embarrassed. He's such about gaiva, he thinks he doesn't have gaiva. Everybody has gaiva.
We like to talk about our gaiva in the Torah, doesn't
So before a person is married, his gaiva isn't such an issue, because he lives his life on his own. And if he has an opinion, he goes and does what he wants. He gets married, now suddenly his gaiva is a problem, because he wants to do something, his wife wants to do something else. If he's like Baal Gaiva, he's going to go into this irrational behavior that they ever described, and it's very hard. It's very, very hard. And that's the beauty of marriage. The marriage lets a person get rid of his gaiva. There's it's a famous story of
the highway, which one?
So here, listen to what Rabbi Chaikin, Rabbi Chaikin, they say a story about Rabbi Chaikin, right? From Cleveland, the Chassan teacher. So in addition to teaching the halachas, he teaches also how to be a mensch. So he says, they say that one of his students called him up after he was married already, and he said that we have a problem. We're arguing. My wife wants to go on vacation to California. I want to go on vacation to Florida. What should we do? So Rabbi Chaikin tells the husband, he says, compromise and go to California. Compromise and go to California. So you have to set aside your own guy, and that's one of the most beautiful things about marriage. A person, if he works on his marriage, if he's smart and he understands what's on the table, he can either have eternal love, he can have a beautiful home, happiness, goodness in his life, sweetness in every day of his life, or he can have his way, misery. So if he chooses right, he'll say, okay, I have to work on my gaiva, whether he realizes it or not. Even if a person doesn't realize that you're working on your gaiva, working on marriage is working on gaiva. To teach yourself that you don't get your way and you don't get upset about it. And not only you don't get upset about it, you're even happy about it. That is getting rid of this gaiva where I have a ratzon, I have a will for something to go one way. That was a tangent off of a tangent. So we're not talking about gaiva, we're not talking about mitzvahs, we're talking about mortgage. We're talking about just a feeling. The person feels something. That's pshat. When simcha comes b'morgish, the Rebbe says that he feels something. He feels the simcha, so many not good things could come out of it. It's a strange thing. It's a little surprising to hear that. That's what the Rebbe says. If the person feels his happiness, not good things could come out of it.
It's not the highest level.
If a person feels,
if a person feels his happiness, so not good things could come out of it. So first, let's try to define what we're talking about. What's good? Very good. Let's try to define what's feeling your happiness. So there's what the person feels inside and what he's experiencing on the outside, and they're not always the same. For example, if a person, I'm struggling over here with examples. If somebody has an example, please, put it on the table so we can understand it better.
No, happiness. No, happiness.
Unhappiness that's felt. For example, I would think this is a good example. You'll tell me what you think about it. If somebody's going by the Rebbe for dollars, on the inside, he's feeling a tremendous happiness. Here in a moment, he's going to see the Rebbe is going to tell him a word, the Rebbe is going to bench him, the Rebbe is going to give him $1. On the outside, he's standing with a fear, he's trembling. He doesn't make a sound, he doesn't make a move. He could barely get out the words to tell the Rebbe that it's his birthday or that he's traveling or whatever else it is that he needs. So what's on the inside, and then he gets the dollar, he walks out, he's dancing. The Rebbe told him bracha v'atzlacha. The Rebbe gave him a bracha for gesund. He's dancing, he's living with it for the rest of his life. He's holding on to this dollar. It makes him happy every time he sees it. This experience that he had with the Rebbe is a very happy event in his life. But b'murgish, what does he feel when he's walking by the Rebbe? He's b'yireh, a complete bittul and a yireh. He's standing in front of the Rebbe. He can't say a word.
What about people that are born?
That's a gilu berada.
Berada.
L'chora, that's a gilu berada. Does it sound like is that what's going on, or because you could argue that when he's going by the Rebbe, he also has a yira on the inside, but it's not a yira he's not broken on the inside. The point mainly is that he's not broken, even though he's standing with complete yira in front of the Rebbe. He's not it's not a depression. It's not an anxiety. It's not a disharmony, a disconnect, a tension inside him. It's a good feeling. He's standing by the Rebbe. It's a vart of simcha. He's standing in front of the Rebbe. But on the outside, there's nothing felt. He's focused, but on the outside, nothing is felt. Shenkin, when somebody goes to a concert, and never mind if there's a place to dance, you go to a chasana, the simcha is felt. Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a moment. So the simcha is felt. The simcha is felt.
Does he bring out simcha for mortgage?
L'chora, that he feels the simcha, that you see that not necessarily every time you have simcha do you feel the simcha. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Another example also be sometimes somebody could be working very, very hard on something very good that he's going to enjoy very much, that he wants very much, but at the moment he's working very hard. So I don't have a good example for it, but let's say somebody is a cheswas, he's clearing his garden. Yeah, he has a house over here in Kanheitzbach, so he has a garden, he paid $2 million. $2.5 million, and he has a garden as a 20 feet by 5 feet, whatever it is, but let's make it bigger. So he's working harder, but the place is full of cinder blocks and stones and weeds and whatever it is. And he set aside, on Sunday he's clearing the place. He's going to make himself a beautiful garden with 100 windows looking at him from this side, 100 windows, and here he's going to be able to sit in peace and enjoy the fresh air of Brooklyn, New York. So he's going now to clear the garden. So he has a wheelbarrow, because when they did construction, the workers dumped all the things over there. And he's schlepping and he's sweating. It's a hot July day, and he's in Gansen. He's in Gansen worn out. But on the inside, he's happy. He's not broken. It's just his happiness that now he has a place where he could have a nice garden. That's what he's feeling on the inside. On the outside, he's feeling very tired and exhausted from the work. These are mishalim. They're decent mishalim. But the main idea over here is, and a deeper way of thinking about it is like this. The murgish means, how do I feel about it? Not the murgish means, what's the thing about? If there's something that calls out joy or any other feeling, if there's something that's good, a painting, a beautiful painting, or for example in sports, let's start with food. Yeah. If there are two people, some people have a type for food, they taste food and they enjoy it. It's the way they were born. It's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing. Some people have no type for food, they taste food and whatever. And they're both eating the same food. You ask the person who's eating who has an enjoyment in food, you'll see, he's very excited about it. The person who has no enjoyment in food, that's why David made him, it doesn't speak to him. You ask him, is this good food? He'll say, yeah, it's good food. Is it better than the other food?
All right.
You ask him honestly. No, that's all right. He's an honest person. He's not trying to show that he doesn't have a type of food. He's an honest person. He says, yeah, the food is very good. But there's no mortgage. There's no excitement. There's no felt about it. The food is good. That's a separate question from, am I getting all excited and tzukach with the fact that the food is good? It's a totally different question. My feelings is a separate story of what the thing is. Same thing in sports. Somebody who's into sports and sees somebody do an amazing play, if it was an amazing basket, a home run, or this and that, he gets all excited and he's talking about it the next day and the day after, can't get out of his mind. Another person sees it and he says, wow, this was amazing. The guy just knocked the ball, whatever it is, 400 feet, amazing. He's not excited. He's not into sports. It's not something that he's into. It's not something that speaks to him. So you ask him that this person managed to take a pitch that was coming at him 100 miles an hour and it was not a curveball, and he went in milliseconds and he hit the ball with the zamin kayach and so perfectly he got it over the wall way into the stands. He says, yeah, it's richtig, but there's no excitement. A person, you're feeling the mortgage, the feeling about it doesn't have to do with the thing itself. And l'chura, that's a little bit deeper than what we were discussing before. The mortgage means when, in addition to what the thing itself is also what my feeling about it is. Do I have a feeling about it? And then it says when a person is besimcha and the simcha comes b'morgish, so that causes his own personality to become stronger. And his own personality, unless he's a tzaddik, if his own personality is getting stronger, so now the other impulses that he has in his personality are strengthened together with it, because the mensch he feels strong, he feels expansive, he feels like he wants to do things, and not everything that he wants to do is necessarily good. So that's the problem with simcha b'morgish. When he feels the simcha, and everything that he has, the good and the not so good, comes out. So it's a problem. So therefore, don't let the simcha be felt.
So it's like a counterbalance.
It's not a counter. You could call it a check, but it's much more than that. It's a denial. It's a complete. You're not allowing the simcha to be felt. You don't feel broken. You feel good on the inside. You feel confident. You feel motivated, but you don't let it translate into an active feeling of excitement and something that's expressed as a joy and a pleasure.
So is that a good thing to have that opposite pull?
So where we're holding now,
controlling you.
Where we're holding now in the Maimer, it's an absolute requirement. Because if you don't have that, you'll end up in very not good places.
Lots of no show.
Much worse than that.
Most of that?
You can end up in very not good places. So therefore, even though we want you to be besimcha, but we have to put a check on it, like you said. We have to stop it from coming b'morgish.
You have to temper it.
You have to temper it, or completely deny it when it comes to the plane of how you feel. This is not very geschmack. So let's see. Not complete denial. You ask the person. Good. So denial is not the right word for it. Do you have a better way of expressing the idea? It's not denial, it's a suppression. Maybe we should call it a suppression.
Can you call it channeled?
What are you channeling into? You're not letting it be expressed. You're not channeling it. It's being suppressed.
You're not letting it carry. You're not getting carried away.
You're not getting carried away, for sure not.
With your simcha. You're not getting carried away.
But you're not even feeling your simcha. It's more than that.
You're not even feeling it.
Gilu birada. On the outside is Rada. On the outside you're trembling. You're standing in front of the Rebbe. At that moment you're not feeling the simcha. You're clearing your backyard. You're busy lifting
Are you
bricks.
saying it's contradictory?
In a way it is. In a way it is. Gilu birada. But this is what it means, that there's two departments. There's the department of what's going on the inside, and there's the department of what's being experienced. Experientially, it's not simcha, but inside, there's a confidence, there's a satisfaction, there's a happiness on the inside. So it's two different things. This is not very geschmack, and it doesn't sound in line with what a freilich chassid is supposed to be. And that's what the Rebbe is going to discuss, and it sounds fantastic. It sounds like it's not achievable. Is that what you're saying?
No, it sounds fantastic. If you can keep
that balance,
to even have that healthy experiences. You just said you stand in front of the Rebbe.
But
you
it
have
also,
it all the time. It's amazing.
Yeah, but it also doesn't fit the
you,
image of the Rebbe is making with his hands, and he wants us jumping up and down, and it doesn't sound like, and the Rebbe is smiling and expects us to smile. I mean,
as long as you know there's Gilead inside, it's fine.
I don't know. It doesn't fit the image of a freilich chassid.
Chassidim always say a
chassid is a freilich. So what's going on over here? Because you can't just say, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't fit with everything else I learned. You have to explain away this problem. Because if you're going to feel your simcha, it could lead to not good things. So that's a problem. So, and that's what the Rebbe addresses in this Maimer in a very geschmacka way. So let's see. Now we're finally holding by Dalid. And let's see what the Rebbe says. Pisa, according to this idea that the simcha must be bebittul, and adrabah, through the bittul you actually get more simcha, which we'll see later in the Maimer. So Pisa mevar bali amuletis b'mamar hanal inin asas chava asas sarachu. According to this idea of simcha b'murgish, the Rebbe Rashab explains in his Maimer the story of Chava and the story of Neach and also the story of Sarah. Before we ask what's the connection between Chet Tzadas, which happened immediately on the day the world was created, to 10 generations later, Noach coming and making wine. No, but later, making wine and getting drunk, and then started going down to Mitzrayim. What's the connection? So they say it's all an Inyan of accomplishing and bringing about Simcha, bringing Simcha into life, bringing Simcha into the world. That's what the story is all about. Like we see when we get to Chava, Eshkel Shal Anovim Sachta V'Nostan Le. There's several different opinions about what the Chet Tzadas was, but Eshkel, one of the opinions is Eshkel Shal Anovim Sachta V'Nostan Le. It was grapes. Uveneach Ksiv, what does it say? Beneach V'Yita Kerem. He planted a vineyard, Vayesh Min HaYayin, and he drank from the wine. The Yayin Hu Inyan HaSimcha. Wine is the Inyan of Simcha. Why? Yeah, not because of Moshe said that it's Inyan of Simcha. In Chassidus, it doesn't go like this. How do we know that wine is the Simcha? It's Inyan of Simcha. Moshe Kosov. That's the state in the pasuk. You see people drinking wine and they get happy. It doesn't mean it's a real thing. It doesn't mean it's a true thing. What makes it true? Moshe Kosov. So state in the pasuk. I say it's in Torah Bichlal, not only Chassidus, but you see it so much in the Rebbe's Torah. Anything the Rebbe needs to prove, there's always a pasuk. It could be the most obvious thing, like when somebody drinks wine, he gets happy. K'mesha Kasuf. State in the pasuk. Yain ha'mesamech likim va'anashim, that wine brings joy to the Eibishter and to people. What's that? Wine brings joy to the Eibishter that you see in the Aveda of the Levim, the Aveda of Shira, of singing in the Beis Hamikdash, which is connected with wine. Which is connected with the singing is connected with Simcha, was done dafka by when they were menasich the wine. So it's the Indian of Simcha by the Eibishter v'anashim, and it brings Simcha to anashim.
Why are you bringing this pasuk? Well, there was no drinking of the wine by Nasicha. Why not bring the pasuk of Yain Samach Lebavenosh, which has to
the Yain Samach Lebavenosh? Is a good question.
This wine is not
first of all,
when you pour into the place of the Mizbeach, it's only for pouring.
First of all, that pasuk is l'chora sufficient for the point over here. We just have to explain that wine makes people happy. Why does that bother with a pasuk that mentions elikim?
Okay.
And
happy.
much more than that. What you're saying is,
well, what's the happiness over here? That he's seeing it being poured?
No, that the Levim are singing shira while the wine is being poured. But I don't know why the Rebbe doesn't bring the pasuk. You have a good point. About Kapanim, this is the pasuk that the Rebbe brings.
Yeah.
So Chava made wine, Noach made wine, and through this they wanted to bring Simcha. But what was the problem by Chava? The Simcha came in a felt way. The Bechava Ksiv, that the Isha, that Chava saw, that the Eitz Hadas is good, it tastes good, it's good to be eaten. And that it's a taiva. In other words, what this pasuk is showing us here, the problem is Vatera Ha'isha. She experienced it, she felt it. The fact that that taiva eats l'maychol, and the fact that taiva u'l'naim is one thing, but Vatera Ha'isha, that she saw, it came b'murgish. She says, "No, in ha'argasha." It came b'murgish. The Noach ratzal l'saken es chet Eitz Hadas. And Noach wanted to fix this problem, the mistake, the error of Chava shuin in ha'argasha, which is the inyan of hargasha. When I learned this ma'amah for the first time, and I saw these words, it brought on me something that was completely a realization that I never had before. I went and I asked somebody who learns Chassidus properly, and he told me, yes, he told me from Amman where it's explained, because I was shocked by this statement. What's the whole problem with Chet Eitz Hadas? Where did we go wrong? Not epis, not a murder, not a Zara, not epis, not a gaiva. It was b'murgish.
It's like
a person feels himself. The Chet Eitz Hadas. So in other words, you expect me to not be b'murgish. Person should not be b'murgish.
It's like Vayeda.
Vayihyu came afterwards, yeah.
Vayeda was the outcome.
It was an outcome,
The
yes.
story
So it was
was-
more of a self-aware. Well, it was a self-awareness.
That's
But Vayihyu is only that now they were able to detect the bad. I don't know if that's a story of a self-awareness. The point is that before they weren't aware of the idea of bad, and now there was an awareness of the idea of rab.
Yeah, but there was always bad. There was bad.
And there was no awareness
Separate.
whatsoever.
Yeah, so that's Akasha.
Before there was
It could be.
Yoda.
It
The dia is
connected
chivur.
to.
before there was no
Could be,
awareness
could be. I
of
just
self.
don't know, but it could
This
be.
is one of the things that the person questioned. He said, how could it be that they were in the Toisif Yediyah? Where's that Shala? How could it be that through a chait,
It's the taste if you do.
they had a Toisif Yediyah? They had a reward that they had. Vayeda Kiyerumim. Somebody, it was a Pekaris asked in the Gemara.
Okay.
You familiar with this?
Not familiar, but tell us.
So this thing, so he shared with him, he said, you're missing the point. It was Nachuz Darga.
Right.
They were desensitized, and now they became sensitive. They went down, so
Now they
they
became
were lower. Before they were sensitive only to the Nachuz, now they became sensitive to Gdab Zachen.
right. Okay, I'll go on.
Yeshus?
No, so Hagasha is not Yeshus. Hagasha B'Pashtus is not yet Yeshus. I don't know. L'chura it's connected to Yeshus. L'chura.
I think so.
But not. It's not a full-on Yeshus.
Is there an
it's
issue
less.
to say
It's less
that
than
it's
Yeshus. First of all, David doesn't say that it's Yeshus.
I'm saying, is there a concern that's not adding up later?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you would call it Yeshus.
They are Morgish. I think the example would be that before Adam and Chava, they didn't feel themselves. It's like when a baby is naked.
No.
The baby
Yeah, but
doesn't see
but that's not. It's not. No, hold on. No, you have to understand. The Chet Etzdas is not what created the Hargasha. The Chet Etzdas was caused by Hargasha. In other words, before that, Adam and Chava were only connected and only had to do with Kedusha. The question is, was the Kedusha coming with a bittul, or was the Kedusha coming with a hergish? In other words, they were completely in the realm of Kedusha. There was no bad. They had nothing to do with the bad.
No.
And before the Chet Etzdas already, Chava made the choice of experiencing the Kedusha in an eifin of Murgis, in an eifin of hergish, where she let her feelings she got her feelings involved in the Kedusha that was there.
So it's not an union of consciousness?
You could call it consciousness.
Where before they were not conscious of themselves.
No,
So
that's
there was no
after.
nakedness.
That's after. There's two parshas, two separate parshas. The first what happened before Tetzadas. Before Tetzadas, there was only Kedusha. The thing is that even in Kedusha, you have to be careful. If you experience Kedusha as something that's not absolutely one and an extension of the Eibishter, in other words, the Morgish, there's a Morgish over here, so a Chet Tetzadas comes out of it. A Chet Tetzadas comes out of it. You're still in Kedusha. Nothing right now is wrong. It's all Kedusha. There's no klippa yet, but it leads to a Chet Tetzadas. The fact that it came from Murgish, she wasn't able to withstand the temptation.
And Nech was trying to correct this.
So Nech was trying to. So that's first of all just it's a phenomenal concept. If you don't want Chet Tetzadas, you cannot be b'Murgish. Devin's gonna talk much more about it later in the Maimon. Al Kapon, we can't be b'Murgish. But what was Noach's idea? He wanted to fix the Chet Tetzadas al yedei Hargasha. Through Hargasha. Was Pshat Noach wanted to fix Chet Tetzadas, which was the problem with which was that it's by Hargasha. He wanted to fix it through Hargasha. What's his Pshat? The Chur Pshat is that he figured that was the wrong type of Hargasha, and I'll bring the right type of Hargasha. That's the best explanation that I could get. Because what do you mean? If the problem is Hargasha, why is his problem is feeling? So how could he possibly think that he could fix it with feeling? It could be that Noach thought that the idea was not that the problem was not that it was feeling, but that it was the wrong type of feeling, and he figured it'll make the right type of feeling. I don't know. That's possibly the explanation. About Kapanim also biyade, it did not work. What happened to Noach? The Vayesh min hayayin.
You can't ask how he thought to get there.
I'm not understanding the meaning of Chava as to what changed in her. I mean, you had the interaction with the Nachash, right? There was. What is it that changed?
Let's try to describe it as a story.
Her eyes opened up, and now she's conscious.
Let's try. Okay. Let's try to describe the story. There's Eitz Hadas.
No.
The Eibishter tells Noach, the Eibishter tells Adam and Chava, don't eat from the Eitz Hadas. They look at the Eitz Hadas, they observe it, they see what it is. Weiter gefahren. If you ask them, to analyze it, they'll probably analyze it correctly. They see what it is. Weiter gefahren. When the Nachash came, the Nachash started making stories about the Eitz Hadas. Started trying to get her interest as a person, her character should become attracted to the Eitz Hadas, that it should be her attraction to the Eitz Hadas. Now it's already mortgage. Before that, there's Eitz Hadas. You want me to analyze it? I'll tell you. Does it look nice? Yeah, it looks nice. The fruit tastes good. Looks like it. Look high quality, whatever it is. Does it have certain other qualities in it? L'maychel, tabul leinayim, v'nechmod lahaskel. Yeah. But it's not a get to me. Chava worked on, the Nachash worked on Chava that she should be attracted to. He started telling her, wait a second, isn't this great stuff? Isn't this something you should be interested in? That's the mortgage.
He sold her on it.
He sold her on it in a way that he drew her impulses to the Eitz Hadas. Her soul, he drew it to the Eitz Hadas. He created an interest in the Eitz Hadas.
Okay.
Fine, but that's still kedusha.
So
It's still she's
we're putting the
kedusha.
blame on the Nachush though.
It absolutely was his fault.
That's it.
The Eivishter didn't give him a chance to excuse himself, right? We had that in Rashi.
Okay.
So that's at that point of the story. Chava is still the world, and Chava and Adam are still in a situation of complete kedusha.
Right.
But what was introduced through the Nachash is that now Chava feels it. It's
She
not
considers
a
it.
bittul. It's not a bittul. It's not just a fact that doesn't have to do with her mitzvahs. It's just an objective fact that's sitting over there somewhere, and therefore she's still completely bottled to the Eibishter. Now there's already her feelings about it, and therefore she has her own
That's what the
hargasha.
Nachush woke up on.
Yes, that's what the Nachash woke up in her.
Okay.
And then once that happened, and she ate from the Eitz
Yeah,
Hadas, so now she was already, her eyes were opened up to the fact that there's Ra, that there's Klippus in the world, and to the pleasures of the Klippus, etc. And now there was shame in the meaning of being Arum, in the meaning of being naked.
All right, got
Okay,
it.
good. All right. So Noach tried to fix it, and it didn't work. What happened? He didn't end up getting the right simcha. He didn't end up getting the right mortgage. Instead of being bebittul, yain hamisamech kiim levayishka, he got drunk. Yain hamishake. V'haganda b'shikas hueder hargash. Even though when somebody's drunk, he also doesn't feel. His sense of feeling is not functioning. Aval heder hargash shebzeholim sad hanav v'abittul. Pshat isn't that he is humble and bottle. Kim it's not bilbul hadas v'hargasha. Hargasha he has. It's just completely, it's everything is firing and all the right. The person is drunk. He has feelings, but they're completely irrational, uncontrolled. They go in all directions. It didn't work. It didn't. It's an expression.
He didn't
accomplish it.
He
He didn't
didn't
accomplish it. He didn't
Okay,
achieve.
okay. Come up with it on his own.
So it didn't work with Noach. When did it work? The hatikun al chet etzadas inin ha'argasha. When was the chet etzadas fixed? When was it corrected? Nasa l'dei Sarah dafka. That was accomplished dafka through Sarah kumavur b'kabbalah shesarah tikna mashakil kol Chava. That Sarah was the one who fixed, who corrected what Chava ruined. The Sarah he b'chinas malchus. Why? Because Sarah is malchus. Shalachein nikra Sarah l'lashon Sarah. That's why her name is Sarah, because it's the lashon of governance, which has to do with malchus. Inin habitul, and malchus is inin of bitul. And that's why Dafka Sarah was able to correct what happened during the Chet Etzadas, because she approached things with a bitul. Since she was batul, so therefore she didn't fall into the mortgage, she didn't fall into the hargasha, and therefore she was able to correct the problem of Chet Etzadas. Just finish a few more lines. And this is why, because Sarah had in her the inin of bitul, in other words, she didn't allow the simcha to be b'morgesh, so therefore she was able to descend and come into contact with questionable situations or questionable things. She had to do with Mitzrayim over here. Because Malchus has in it the quality of bitul, therefore even when she descends, descending is only in order to come back up. Because the reason why Malchus descends is not because Malchus is interested in those lowly things in the klippus that find themselves down below, but rather it's only in order to go down and to be mevar than its because it's completely in bittul. It doesn't have its own agenda coming down into the world. And so too, when Avram and Sarah descended to Mitzrayim physically, this was in order so that when they later leave Mitzrayim, it should be in a way where Avram is loaded up with cattle and with silver and with gold, which this was granted him through Sarah Kmeshkasu, that the reason why Avram got all of this cattle and silver and gold was because of a gift that Pari gave him, which he gave in order to mollify Sarah. So it was through Sarah that he got this. It was through the bittul of Sarah that Avram was able to be mevayer all of these nitzaitis. And through this, because of this, she merited to have a higher type of a life, because she had bittul, and because she was able to go down into Mitzrayim and take out the klippos that were there without herself being affected by it. So therefore, she was eichel to a higher type of life. In other words, if a person enters into any endeavor, into any pursuit, and he goes there with his own agendas, with the things that he's interested in, and with his own yeshus and mitzias, so there's many traps, there's many ways that he could become sidetracked by his own interests and not end up getting what it is that he needs to achieve. If somebody goes down to Mitzrayim and he's not within his bittul to the Eibishter, and he sees all the types of Mitzrayim, all of the attractions of Mitzrayim, he could get stuck and ensnared by everything that's going on in Mitzrayim. If somebody goes down to Mitzrayim b'bittul, it's not about me. I'm on a mission over here. There's nitzaitis that have to be brought up. So then he could go down to Mitzrayim and come back up. And that's what Sarah accomplished. Noach did not have this. Chava did not have this. Therefore, they couldn't do it. Sarah was the first one who was able to do this. Mm-hmm. And that's the importance that Simcha shouldn't be b'morgish. And this is where we're holding on to, in the Maimer, and we'll stop over here. Mitzvah will continue next week. This is really starting. This is already a whole other thing.
She didn't fully correct it in terms of like, in terms of